So in this video, we're going to continue our conversation as it relates to bonds. And in this problem, we're going to go over a bond sold at a premium. You'll remember from, if I go back to slide 8, we talked about that the reason why a bond may be sold for more or less than the face amount is directly related to how our stated interest rate for the bond compares to the market interest rate. And so we've already gone through examples where the bond was sold at the face amount, which means that the stated interest rate was equal to the market rate. We've gone through an example where the bond was sold at a discount, which would mean our bond interest rate was lower than the market interest rate. And again, the idea here is that the market interest rate is sort of on average what are bonds with similar risk and maturity offering in their interest rates, sort of just generally in the market. And so if our interest rate compared to the market rate, if ours is lower, then we would have to do something to essentially entice investors to invest in our bonds. And so the way that we would do that is by offering them a discount on the initial price of the bonds. So we would make them pay a little bit less than the face amount. But then the reverse is the situation that we're about to go through, where our interest rate is actually more than what's going on in the market. So what other bonds of similar risk and maturity are offering is actually lower than what our bond is offering. So if I jump ahead to slide, I believe it's 13, right, we can see the details of that example. We again are going to be issuing bonds with a face amount of $700,000. Our stated interest rate, so the stated rate that's included in the problem, is 12%. Again, this is the face amount or the future value. Bonds are paying interest semi-annually. They mature in 10 years. And then for bonds of similar risk and maturity, the market rate is 10%. So we can again set our expectation in saying if our interest rate, the bonds that we're offering, are offering a higher interest rate than what's going on in the market, then we will actually be able to sell these bonds as what's known as a premium. And so it's going to be more than, the price of our bonds is actually going to be more than the listed face amount. And again, the reason for that is because if we're offering a higher interest rate, then the investors would be willing to pay a little bit more up front for our bonds than they would for others in the market. So let's see how that pans out in our Excel spreadsheet. So if I'm going to click over to the bond premium Excel spreadsheet, we'll blow that up a little bit so that we can see here's all of the data and our information. And again, real quick, I'm going to go ahead and calculate our face amount times our stated interest rate divided by 2, and that's going to give us our interest payment. Just so that's one less thing that we have to calculate when we go ahead and do our formula, our interest payment. And then using Excel, again, remember, our expectation is that the present value of this bond is going to be more than $700,000, and that's because our stated rate is bigger than or more than the market interest rate. So when we do that calculation, we want to keep that expectation in mind. The calculation that we're going to do, as we did with the previous discount example, is still equals PV. If I click on the formula that they provide me, then my Excel just kind of prompts with what information it needs to calculate the formula. The rate. So anytime we're asked for the rate in these present value calculations, what they're asking for is this market rate of interest. And again, because this is a semi-annual bond, the interest is paid semi-annually. I'm going to divide that interest rate by 2. Number of periods, it's 10 years, but again, we compound twice per year. So I'm going to take 10 times 2, and that's going to give me 20 number of periods. My payment amount, how much am I expected to pay each and every 6 months? It's that $42,000, and I'm making it negative because these are cash outflows for my business. Future value is going to be, again, negative. How much am I committing to pay once these bonds actually mature? The $700,000 face amount. And then type. Again, if we have an ordinary annuity where interest payments are done at the end of the period, it would be 0. If it's an annuity due, meaning interest payments are made on day 1 of each of the 6 months, then it would be type 1. So because we have an ordinary annuity, I'm going to do type 0. And when I do that, I come up with a bond value of $787,235. And again, what we're saying here is that the bond is worth more than its face amount because our bond is offering a higher interest rate than what's going on in the market. On January 1st, we're going to make a similar entry as we did with the bond discount. We're first going to show the amount of cash that we are going to receive on day one. And again, the cash is directly related to this bond value, the price of the bonds that we calculated, given all of the, $700,000 future value, $42,000 payment, 20 periods, a market interest rate of 10% divided by 2. The amount of cash, the price of our actual bonds on January 1st is going to be $787,235. That's the amount of cash that we're going to receive on day one. We're also on day one going to record a bond payable. The bond payable is always going to be equal to the face amount, which is $700,000. And then again, as we had with the discount, our debits and our credits don't equal. In this case, though, we need a credit to balance our journal entry. We need a credit of $87,235. That credit represents the amount above and beyond the face amount that our bond is actually worth. And so when we go to account for that in our journal, we are going to account for that as a premium on bond payable. So similar to what we did with the discount, this premium is sort of thought of hand in hand with the bond payable. So as the bond payable gets reported on January 1st, we have to account for the premium on bond payable on January 1st as well. And so also similar to what we did with the discount problem, you're going to see over time that we are going to make adjustments to this premium. Each and every accounting period that we account for interest, we're going to make adjustments to that premium account. And so again, if I click over to the bond discount problem, what we saw was that over time, using our amortization schedule, we saw that we started with a bond value in our discount problem that was lower than the face amount. And slowly but surely, we removed a small portion of that discount. We adjusted that discount each and every period. And if we look in our journal, what was happening with our discount is it was initially recorded as a debit, and then over time, we reported incremental decreases to that discount. As we adjusted that discount over time, look what happened to our bond payable balance. The principal balance started to climb higher and higher towards that face amount. So that over the 20 periods, what we should see is that the bond value, as we eliminate portions of that discount over time, the bond value winds up being the total face amount, $700,000. We are going to see a similar process here for the bond premium. But what we're going to do is, instead of starting with our bond value at a lower amount than the face amount and sort of building up to $700,000, we're doing the reverse for a premium. We actually have a total bond value on January 1st, 2021 of $787,235. The bond plus its premium gives us the total bond value as of January 1, 2021. And so what we're going to do is, as we see this bond value over time, what we're going to see is that it's going to decrease over time. So we start high with the bond premium and we work our way down to $700,000. If I tap on my column N and hit unhide, you'll see that I have a similar amortization schedule as I had with the bond discount. And again, you're not going to be asked to create these big long amortization schedules, but I do this so that you can see that in its entirety, when we use this effective interest method over time, what we're going to see for a bond premium problem is a bond value that starts higher, starts at $787,000, and then over time, as we use the effective interest method, look what happens in our last period. We then have a bond value of $700,000. That face amount is what we're aiming for after the 20 periods of interest have gone by. Now, let's refresh our memory as we did with the bond discount problem in how we use this effective interest method in order to sort of amortize this premium and account for our interest expense every period. So on June 30th, we're going to have our first interest payment related to this bond. That interest payment is obviously going to require us to have a cash outflow. So the first part of our entry is going to be our credit to cash. $42,000, that's how much we're promising to pay every period. And if you remember from the previous video, the way that we account for interest expense, remember, as we have these bonds outstanding, we are accruing interest just the same way we would with a long-term note, right? Or even with a short-term note, right? As you have the note or the liability outstanding over time, you accrue interest, and you have to account for that as interest expense. And so over the period of time, for the first 6 months, we've had interest expense. And the way, using the effective interest method, the exact same process that we used with the discount is what we're going to use with this premium bond problem. The exact same process. We take the current value of our bond, which is the bond plus its premium amount. We multiply that by the market rate of interest. And again, because we have semi-annual interest in this instance, we're going to divide by 2. That gives us our interest expense as of June 30th. And again, notice, our interest expense is not going to be the same as our interest paid. That's because with the effective interest method, to calculate interest expense, we use the bond value times the market rate of interest. And to calculate the interest payment, we use the face value times the stated rate of interest. So because those two things are different, we know that we're going to need an additional debit in our entry. That debit is just going to be the difference between the interest paid and the interest expense. And that debit is what we are doing, or is what we are using essentially to amortize or adjust our premium on bond payable. So again, with the premium, we start with a credit. It's actually increasing the overall value of our bond. And then over time, what we're going to do is start to amortize a little piece of that premium. We're going to make a debit to that premium so that over time, notice what that's doing to the total value of our bond. We had a bond value of $787,000, again, the bond plus its premium, but now we just made this debit adjustment. So what we're doing to the value of our bond is slowly decreasing it over the maturity period. And again, notice, you can see we calculated the value of our bond, $784,597, and that's the same bond value that we see here in our amortization schedule. What we are accounting for is the fact that over time, the value of this bond is going to decrease because we are periodically amortizing or adjusting that premium on bond payable account. Let's do it one more time for December 31st. So again, on December 31st, the parts of our entry are going to be exactly the same as they were for the June 30th adjustment. Interest expense, premium on bond payable, and cash. The cash is always going to be the $42,000 interest payment. That's how much we're promising to pay every period. Interest expense is always going to be the current value of our bond times the market rate of interest. And again, because we have semi-annual periods, we're going to divide that by 2. And then the adjustment that we make, the debit that we make to our premium, is simply going to be the difference between the interest that we paid and the interest expense that we are accounting for using the effective interest method. So that again, we will see that our bond value as of December 31st, 2021, if we take the previous bond value minus this adjustment that we just made, this debit to our premium, a debit to the liability account is making the liability decrease. So we see that yet again on December 31st, our bond payable. So again, if we were making financial statements as of December 31st, 2021, we would see a bond payable on our balance sheet in the liabilities section, and it would be worth $781,827. So we can see again how the process that we go through for these bonds discounts and bond premiums are exactly the same. It's just the starting point is different. With a bond discount, we started with a bond value. If we look over on that discount tab, we started with a bond value of $625,000, and slowly but surely we adjusted that discount so that we were working our way from that low bond value up to the face amount of $700,000. Versus the premium. The premium, we started high. We started with a value of our bond that was higher than $700,000, higher than our face amount. And then slowly but surely we see that we are amortizing that premium over time so that we wind up after the 20 periods, after the maturity date, or on the maturity date, we wind up with a bond value of $700,000. So just to kind of wrap up this video, I love this this diagram because it kind of shows us the relationship between bonds that have discounts and bonds that have premiums. So the amounts on these are a little bit different, right? The amounts that we see on the slides are a little bit different from what we calculated, which is fine. We're just talking about a bond that had a discount and a bond that had a premium. And you can see that over time what's happening is that we are essentially adjusting, using the effective interest method, we are adjusting the value of those bonds over time so that when we get to this maturity period, both, whether we have a discount or a premium, when we get to this maturity period, the value of that bond should be its face amount, right? So we adjust, when we have a discount, we adjust upwards towards the $700,000 face amount because we're starting low and we're moving high. And then for a premium, we're starting high and moving low. We adjust downwards towards that $700,000 face amount.